Do you want to become a millionaire? Then you probably need to become more frugal. But I don't mean you need to stop spending money. I don't mean you can't travel. I don't mean you have to, eat rice and beans every day. And I definitely don't think you should spend your entire 20s sitting at home refusing to do anything fun. I think there's a much better way to approach being frugal. Spend money on the things that actually matter to you and cut back on the things that don't. That's how I personally try to approach my finances. I want to build wealth, I want to invest, I want to eventually become a millionaire. But I also want to enjoy my life along the way, and I think that you can do both. So, as usual, guys, before we get into this, I'm not a financial advisor, so this is not financial advice. This is purely for educational purposes only. So, I think being frugal gets a bad reputation because people sometimes confuse being frugal with being cheap, and they're not the same thing. Being cheap can mean, refusing to spend money even when spending it would make your life significantly better. Being frugal, or at least, how I see it, is being intentional about where your money goes. It's asking, is this actually worth the money I'm spending? And if the answer is yes, you spend the money. But if the answer is no, then obviously don't. And that sounds incredibly simple, but I think it's actually a really powerful way to look at your finances. Because you don't need to eliminate every expense. You need to eliminate the expenses that don't provide much value to you. So, for example, personally, I really enjoy traveling. I think traveling is one of the best things you can spend money on. You get to experience different places, meet different people, see how other people live, you get outside your normal routine. And, I think there's a lot of personal growth that can come from that. So, I'm not going to tell myself, I'm trying to become a millionaire, therefore I can't travel. That's not how I want to live. That's not the case. I want to still enjoy my life while shooting for my financial goals. But I also don't need to fly first class. I don't need to stay at the most luxurious hotel. I don't need to spend, hundreds of dollars every night on a hotel room just because I can, right? I can still have an amazing trip while being conscious of what I'm spending. And that's the balance that I think is really important. Spend heavily on the things you value, but be frugal with the things you don't. One area where I personally try to be more frugal is eating out. I like going out to eat, obviously, right? Most of us probably do. It's fun. So I'm not going to pretend I never do it, right? But eating out can become a massive recurring expense if you're doing it constantly. So instead of saying, I'm never eating at a restaurant again, I'll just be more selective. Maybe I choose a less expensive restaurant. Maybe I go out less frequently. Maybe I cook at home most of the time and, go out when I actually want the experience because there's a difference between, I can't afford to eat out and I'm choosing not to eat out tonight because I'd rather put that money towards something else. And the second one gives you a lot more control, right? And those little decisions add up, especially over a long period of time. Another one for me is online shopping. And online shopping, I've talked about it on this channel before. It's incredibly easy, right? You see something, you click it, you buy it, and then, 2 days later, the package is sitting at your door. And the problem is that you can end up buying things that you never actually needed. So I've tried to limit my online shopping as much as possible. If I need something, I'll buy it, but if something breaks and I need a replacement, I'll buy it. And, if there's something I genuinely want and I've thought about it for a while, I'll consider buying it. I'm someone who I try to avoid, impulse purchases because I know that my thoughts about something might change, an hour from now, a day from now, a week from now. So I guess for me, the more expensive something is, the longer I actually take to think about it. I don't want to constantly be buying random things just because they're on sale or because an algorithm showed them to me, right? Because it's, for example, on sale isn't a reason to buy something you don't need, right? If you spend $50 on something instead of $100 and it's something you don't need, you didn't save $50, you spent $50. And some people kind of look at it like that. They're like, "Oh, I saved this amount of money buying something." No, if you're buying something, you're spending the money. It's just a matter of how much, right? So again, if it's something you need and it's on sale, fantastic, right? That's kind of like a two in one. But if something's on sale, it doesn't mean, "Oh, I have to buy it and I saved money by buying it." And here's when being frugal becomes really powerful. The goal isn't just to have a bigger bank account. The goal is to create money that you can put toward your future, right? So let's say you find ways to save an extra $300 a month, right? That's $3,600 a year. And if you invest that money consistently over decades, of course, it's going to become significantly more valuable than the original $3,600. And this is where I think people sometimes underestimate the power of, relatively small decisions. You don't necessarily need to find, like I talk about, you don't need to find this incredible investment that returns 50%, right? You can just simply spend less than you earn, invest the difference, and repeat that over a long period of time, right? It's not exciting and it can be boring, but it works. But there's also a line that you don't want to cross, and this is really important. Don't become so obsessed with saving money that you stop living your life. You're not going to get your 20s back, right? This is especially an important thing while you're young. And I know it might sound kind of contradictory for those of you that have watched my other videos because I talk about how important it is in your earlier years in your life to be investing in things like that, but it's also important to, still enjoy your life at the same time. So it's kind of like a happy medium that you have to find, right? Because you're not going to get your 20s back, right? If traveling is something you love, travel. If you love going out with your friends, go out sometimes. If you have hobbies that cost money, but they genuinely make you happy, budget for them, right? You don't need to feel guilty every time you spend money because, the point of building wealth is ultimately to give yourself more freedom, not less. So if becoming a millionaire requires you to be miserable for 30 years, I'm not sure that's the kind of financial success that, I would be interested in. I'd rather find a balance where I'm building wealth aggressively while still enjoying the life that I'm building. And one of the biggest things that can help with this is avoiding lifestyle inflation. As your income goes up, it's so easy for your expenses to go up with it. You get a raise, you get a nicer car, nicer apartment, expensive restaurants, you start getting, or you start going on more expensive vacations, and suddenly your $10,000 raise isn't really a $10,000 raise because you're spending that money every year. So instead, try to let your income grow faster than your lifestyle. If you get a raise, maybe you invest part of it, maybe you use some of it to improve your lifestyle, and maybe you save some. You don't have to live exactly the same way forever. It's okay to enjoy your success. Just don't let every increase in income immediately turn into an increase in spending, right? I've made a video on this channel before where I talked about I got a $13,000 raise, and the vast majority of that went to just increasing my auto contributions for my investments because, at that point in my life, and I guess still, I'm comfortable with how I live, right? I don't need to add all these luxurious things into my life. And I know the importance of, earlier on in my life, investing more money and things like that. So I don't need to go get the new car, get a house upgrade, buy some crazy things that I'm not going to be using a lot, right? I understand that at this point in my life. So if I had to summarize my approach to being frugal, it's this. Be cheap with things that you don't care about, and spend money on things that you actually genuinely value. For me, that means I want to travel. Again, I don't need luxury travel. I enjoy going out to eat, but I don't need to eat at expensive restaurants every week. I want to have nice things, but I don't need to constantly buy new things just because they're available, right? I want to build wealth, so I make investing and saving a priority. And that's what being frugal looks like to me, right? It's not, deprivation, it's intentional spending. And becoming a millionaire isn't necessarily about never spending money, right? It's about making sure you're spending money on things that actually matter to you, right? So, like I said, travel if you love traveling, go out with your friends, have experiences, enjoy your life, but you don't need the most expensive version of everything. You don't need, for a lot of people, it's like, oh, I need the newest iPhone as soon as it comes out. No one really cares. It's not worth getting a new phone every year, however often they release them. Personally, my phone I've had for I don't even know how long. The back of it was it sounds bad, but the back of it was literally coming off. So I bought a case and it just holds the back of it. Obviously, it holds it all together. And the phone works fine, there's no issues with it. So I just don't have a reason to go get a new phone, right? So I went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but you get the point. So you definitely don't need to spend every dollar you make, right? Every dollar you don't waste is a dollar you can put towards your future. And if you consistently do that for years and decades, you're giving yourself a much better chance of building real wealth, right? So be frugal, but don't be miserable. Spend on what you love, cut the things you don't, and invest the difference. So that's it for the video today, guys. If you enjoy this type of content, please feel free to subscribe. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.